Hello student, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Let me introduce myself. This is Vivek Thaure, working as an assistant professor in the Department of Zoology, VDMD College, Degur. In this session, we are going to study about the conservation strategies for a changing climate. The conservation strategies must adopt the challenges posed by climate change, which affects ecosystem biodiversity and natural resources. Here are some key approaches. The climate resilient conservation planning. The ecosystem based adaptation that include protecting and restoring a natural ecosystem, for example, wetland and forest, to enhance resilience against climate impacts like flooding and drought. So we need to protect and restore first the natural ecosystem. That include wetlands, the water bodies, and the forest that provide a lot of natural resources to human beings, along with that oxygen, which is most essential for the survival of any organism. So this will resilience against the climatic impact. For example, like floods and drought can be prevented if we focus on restoring the natural resources. Again, the next point comes the climate corridor design. Establishing protected corridors to facilitate species migration as temperature and habitat shifts. So climate corridor design, what does it mean? That we should establish a protected corridor to facilitate so they can easily move their location or move from the area where they are under the some sort of danger, so they can migrate easily. And if there is some sort of change in the temperature, precipitation, or any kind of habitat shift, they can move to the different location to protect themselves. So we need to focus on climate corridor design. Along with that, the next is dynamic protected areas. So adjusting conservation boundaries based on changing species distribution and ecosystem need. So conservation boundaries should be adjusted on the changing species distribution. So for example, there is a high species, there is no need to protect that area because there is a higher number of or a least concerned species. But if the species number is very less, we need to protect that areas. We need to focus on that areas, and on we need to adjust the conservation boundaries among that area for changing distribution of species. Next, that is habitat restoration and connectivity. So reforestation and afforestation. So planting native trees to restore degraded landscape and increase carbon sequestration. So this simply means that we need to restore the more as possible as tree or the plant, because if the land become barren or not able to, it is not quite fertile, so the biodiversity of that particular ecosystem or the particular region is ultimately gets on the decreasing level. So we need to protect that. We need to focus on that. By how we can overcome this? So by planting native trees to restore degraded landscape and increase carbon sequestration. So again, next point comes here: wetland and coastal restoration. Restoring mangroves, coral reefs, and salt marshes to buffer against sea level rise and storm. So mangroves and coral reefs and salt marshes, these are present on some sort of boundaries of an ecosystem. So these protect that particular ecosystem against the sea level rise and the natural disasters like storms. Next, that is wildlife corridors, linking fragmented habitats to allow species movement and genetic diversity. So wildlife corridor, this concept include some sort of fragment habitat. There is some sort of small habitat should be linked with each other, so the species can be freely move from one location to the another location. So what will happen? It will increase or improve the genetic diversity in that particular animal, particular organism, or in the species. So ultimately, this simply means if there are some sort of few what we call as fragmented areas or fragmented habitats are present there. And if only a most vulnerable or critically endangered species is present in that fragmented area. So what will happen if some sort of disease, natural disaster, or a higher level of predation occurs? Then what will happen? The species, ultimately the number of species being affected, and the number goes on decreasing, and ultimately the species become extinct. So again, next, assisted adaptation and relocation. So assisted gene flow, enhancing genetic diversity by introducing heat or drought resistant variant species. So what we call as, we need to enhance the genetic diversity by enhancing or introducing heat or drought resistant variant species. So the effect of heat and drought should not be more impactful in that species. So this will overcome the climate change. Next, assisted migration, relocating species at risk of extinction to more suitable climate. Ex situ conservation, using seed banks, zoos and botanical garden to preserve threatened species. So in the ex situ conservation, we can use seed banks, animals and botanical garden to preserve the threatened species, the endangered or critically endangered, even the vulnerable species. Sustainable land and water management. It includes agroforestry and regenerative agriculture, integrating trees and soil conservation techniques to maintain biodiversity and reduce carbon emission. Water conservation strategies include implementing water shade management and sustainable irrigation practices. Sustainable fishery management, using ecosystem-based approach to prevent overfishing and maintain marine biodiversity. So all these factors such as agroforestry, regenerative agriculture, water conservation strategies, and sustainable fishery management, these falls under the category of sustainable land and water management. So what is sustainable? Sustainable is using something in the way that the future generation is able to see or use that resources once again. So in the sustainable way, it is for the future generation. We are conserving some sort of resources for the future generation. So it is sustainable. For this maintaining the sustainability, we need to focus on the best practices that are used for to prevent some sort of erosion, to prevent overfishing or deforestation. All these activities helps to maintain the sustainable land and water management for biodiversity conservation. Again, the policy and community engagement, indigenous and local knowledge integration, partnering with local communities to incorporate traditional conservation practices. As our national education policy, when we study about it, it includes in the syllabus that IKS, Indian Knowledge System. So what is the benefit of including Indian Knowledge System to our educational system? The most important benefit that we have our local knowledge, so indigenous knowledge. So the people who were living in our motherland, they were so knowledgeable that they knew that which plants is used for treatment of which kind of disease. So how the proper caring of the animal should be taken, how to prevent the diseases in that organism. So this kind of knowledge, or indigenous and local and traditional knowledge, should be incorporated in the conservational practices. Next, the climate smart policies, creating laws and incentives for conservation efforts that account for climate change. Next, public awareness and education, promoting climate literacy and conservation ethics among the public. So this is the most important point, that public awareness and education. So we need to aware about the climate change to the people, and we should provide the education that tells include the conservation policies, that include the conservation strategies to maintain the proper climate, to maintain the proper health of our earth and the ecosystem. So this is most important, that policy and community engagement is most important factor. We need to focus on that. So when we aware the people, they should know the importance of climate change, and they will focus on protection of environment. Next, the monitoring and research and technology. Climate and biodiversity monitoring using satellite imaging, AI, and citizen science to track changes in species distribution and ecosystem health. So, with the help of satellite imaging, we can see that what percentage or how many organism or plant are present in a particular area. So using the artificial intelligence, so the time required to calculate the effect of climate change on the biodiversity, or the on the plants that or animals that are distributed in that particular area. So what are the probability of their extinction, or chance of vulnerability? So we can we can betterly overcome this issue with the help of artificial intelligence. Along with that, citizen science to track changes in species distribution and ecosystem health. So we can help study how the species is distributed, and the overall health of ecosystem can be calculated with the help of this type of technology. Along with that, early warning system. So developing the models to protect climate impact and inform the conservation planning. So we have to we have to make or develop the models to predict the climate impact. So first, if we know that some sort of natural disaster or climatic impact is going to happen, so we need to take the control measures to prevent that, or to protect our biodiversity from that effect. Along with that, carbon sequestration research. So exploring innovative way to store carbon in forests, soils, and ocean. So carbon is most important. So for this, we need to store carbon in the forest, soil, and ocean to protect and monitor research and technology in the help to protect the biodiversity.